Corinne Alvarez was 34 the morning she watched them wheel the 10th desk away. It happened before 9. Two men from facilities, a hand truck, a chair with one squeaky caster, and a nameplate. They'd scraped it blank already. You could still see the ghost of the letters if you caught the light. She didn't. She didn't ask why. She'd learned a long time ago that asking why on that floor got you a look, not an answer. Instead, she reached for a Post-it. She wrote the date. She peeled it, pressed it into the corner of her planner, and went back to work. The 10th desk cleared in 14 months. And nobody said a word. At the quarterly, a week later, in front of 40 people, Sloan Ackerman shrugged like it was weather. "They just don't last up here," she said. "It's a demanding floor." Behind her, on the big screen, the turnover report glowed. Green bars. A single phrase in the corner. Within range. The room nodded. Of course they did. But in a banker's box, in the hall closet of a small apartment in Denver, sat 14 months of something nobody on that floor ever thought was worth keeping. Printed every single Friday, before anyone knew there was anything to hide. If you've ever seen everything on a floor and been the least believed person in the building, this story is for you. Before we start, do me one small favor. Hit subscribe, and in the comments, tell me what city you're watching from. I read every one. Now, let's go back to the beginning. Halcyon Ridge Commercial Real Estate had its offices in Cherry Creek, glass and pale wood, a view that made people forget to close deals. Corinne took the job for one reason, and she'd have told you so plainly if you asked. It paid $19,000 more than the one she left. She'd spent 11 years in hospital administration. Scheduling, the kind of work nobody notices until it breaks. She was good at it. She was better than good. She could take a surgeon's tantrum and a room shortage and a nurse out sick, and by lunch it all fit, and nobody knew how much fitting she'd done. That was the job. That was the whole job. You were the person no one looked at. Her mother had started needing care 2 years back. Memory, mostly, little things at first. Then, not so little. The facility wasn't cheap. Nothing about it was cheap. And $19,000 when you say it out loud is just a number. But when it's the difference between a place with a garden and a place without one, it stops being a number. It becomes a garden. So she took the job. Her first week, she learned the floor. 3 principals ran it. Grant Mercer, Sr., all teeth and warmth, the kind of man who remembered your coffee order and forgot your name. Sloan Ackerman, Sr., the brain of the place, quiet in the way a closed door is quiet. And Theo Beck, the third one, the one the others seemed to route around, though she couldn't have told you how she knew that yet. She just felt it, the way you feel a draft. She learned the coffee machine. She learned which conference room had the broken blinds. She learned that the copier on the east side jammed, and the one by the kitchen didn't. Small things. The things that make a day run. And she learned the open secret. Because it wasn't hidden. The title of the thing had already been said out loud, 100 times. In the break room, and the elevator, and the parking garage. 9 assistants. 14 months. All of them supporting Mercer and Ackerman. Every one of them coded the same way in the system. Voluntary, they just didn't last up here. One of the other assistants told her, on day 3, over-burned coffee. Told her low, the way you'd tell someone a hallway was haunted. There'd been a woman named Dominique Ellis, assistant number 7, managed out around month 9. She noticed things, the woman said. She said things. And then she looked at the door, and she changed the subject. And Dominique Ellis was never mentioned again. Not once. It was like her name had a temperature, and everyone knew better than to touch it. Corinne filed that away too. Not on a Post-it. Just in the back of her, where the careful part lived. By the end of week 2, she'd started a habit. It wasn't a plan. She wants me to be clear about that. She had no plan. It was a hand that didn't know how to stop. Every Friday, before she left, she printed the shared Outlook calendar. All 3 principals, every meeting, every delegate, every block of gray on the grid. She printed it on the machine by the kitchen, the one that didn't jam. She folded the pages once, she took them home. And she put them in a banker's box in the hall closet, on the shelf above the winter coats. Why? In the hospital, an undocumented schedule was how people got hurt. That was the truth of it. A room double booked, a handoff nobody wrote down, a patient in a hallway because the paper said one thing and the world said another. She'd seen it. She'd cleaned up after it. And the cleaning up had left a mark on her, the way it leaves a mark on everyone who does that work long enough. She wasn't suspicious. She wasn't watching anyone. It was just a hand that didn't know how to stop. A woman who'd learned, in a place where it mattered, that the schedule was the truth, and the truth belonged in a box where you could find it again. So the box filled, one Friday at a time. Now, Theo Beck. He said good morning. That was the first thing. It sounds like nothing. In most buildings, it is nothing. But on that floor, from those men, it was not nothing. Grant Mercer said good morning like he was billing you for it. Sloan didn't say it at all. Theo said it like he meant it, like he'd noticed she was a person and not a piece of the furniture that made his day arrive on time. And she noticed something back. She noticed that Theo Beck was often not copied on emails. Threads about deals, off-market ones, the kind that didn't hit the public listings, moved between Grant and Sloan, and a handful of names she didn't know yet. And Theo's name wasn't on them. She'd see him get looped in late, after a decision was already a decision. She'd watch him read a message and go still for a second, just a second, before he answered. She didn't think anything of it. That's the honest part. She didn't build a theory. She just saw it, the way she saw the jammed copier and the broken blinds. A thing that didn't quite fit. And she filed it, because filing was what her hands did. The first centimeter closed at the quarterly. That was the big meeting. 40 people in the largest room, the one with the good view, the Lodo brick going gold in the afternoon. Corinne was there to take minutes. That was her job. Sit at the side, type quietly, disappear. Sloan presented the turnover report. She stood, and she clicked, and the green bars came up. She talked about retention benchmarks and industry averages, and the particular pressures of a high-performing floor. And then she landed on the phrase, within range. Our turnover is within range for this market segment. Somebody nodded. Grant leaned back and smiled and said, to the room, easy as anything. The truth is, assistants aren't built for the pace up here. No offense. He said it like a joke. People laughed. The little laugh people give when the powerful say something and it's easier to laugh. And Corinne kept typing. Her face did nothing. Her face had 11 years of doing nothing while surgeons screamed. But her eyes came up. Just for a second. They found Theo Beck across the room. His jaw was tight, a small muscle working under the skin. He was looking at the screen, at the green bars, at within range. And whatever he was thinking it hard, and holding it harder. Then his eyes moved, and they met hers. That was all. 2 seconds. A principal and an assistant sharing a look across 40 people, and the whole room saw it, and the whole room thought nothing of it. Because that's exactly the kind of thing a room decides is nothing. He looked at her, and she looked at him, and in that look was a full sentence that neither of them said. You see it too. Then she looked back at her keyboard, and he looked back at the screen. And the meeting went on. First centimeter. Closed that night, at home, she did something she hadn't done before. She opened the box, not to look for anything. She'd tell you that. She just felt like reading. Her mother was asleep. The apartment was quiet. And Corinne sat on the floor of her hall closet with the stack she had so far. And she started laying the Fridays out in front of her, one after another, in order. And that's when the shared calendar gave up a secret it had no idea it was keeping. Here's the thing about a live calendar. A shared Outlook grid. It's alive. It moves. A meeting gets renamed. A block gets deleted. Somebody drags an appointment 2 hours later, and the old time simply ceases to have ever existed. The live calendar only ever shows you now. It has no memory. It can't. That's not what it's for. But a printout has a memory. A printout is a photograph. It says, this is what Friday looked like at 4:52 p.m. on this date, and nothing you do next Tuesday can change it. Corinne didn't think any of that in words. Not yet. She just noticed, laying the pages side by side, that some things didn't match. There were site visits on the printed Fridays, off-market from the addresses. And there were blocks she'd learned to recognize. A certain kind of block, 3 hours long, always with the same shorthand, always with a 72-hour note attached. Signature window. She'd seen the phrase enough to know it meant a deal closing on a clock. And here was the strange part. Those blocks lived on Grant's calendar. And on Sloane's. On their Fridays. Again and again. Month after month. They never lived on Theo's. Not once. In the whole stack. She sat back on her heels. She looked at the pages. And then she did the thing that made her Corinne. She didn't jump. She checked. She went to her laptop. And she pulled up the current live shared calendar. The real one. And she went hunting for those same blocks, those same dates. And a lot of them weren't there. Renamed or gone. A 3-hour signature window on a printed Friday from 3 months back was, on the live calendar, now a 1-hour internal sync, or a hold, or nothing at all. Smooth, clean, as if it had never happened. But it had happened. She was holding the proof of it. Ink on paper on her closet floor. She still didn't have a theory. Understand that. She had a mismatch, a live schedule that said one thing, and a printed one that said another. In the hospital, that mismatch was the whole ballgame. That mismatch was how people got hurt. Somewhere in her chest, the old alarm started to ring. Quiet but ringing. She needed to know if she was imagining it. And she couldn't ask anyone. Who would she ask? Not HR. Not Grant. Certainly not Sloane. So she did something careful. Something that could be nothing. She built herself a piece of cover. The next week, she went to Theo Beck with a scheduling conflict. A real-looking one. She'd noticed, genuinely noticed, that 2 of his blocks overlapped on the coming Friday, and she framed it as a simple assistant question. Mr. Beck, you've got a hold and a client call stacked at 2. Which one should I protect? An ordinary question. The kind she asked 10 times a day. He looked at his screen. Then he looked at her. And he answered a question she hadn't asked. Neither of those is real, he said. Quietly, I don't get the Friday blocks. A pause. You've probably noticed I don't get a lot of things on Fridays. She held very still. I've noticed, she said, just that. He looked at her another moment. Something passed behind his eyes. A decision being weighed. And then he said, in the same low voice, you keep good records. I can tell. It's a rare thing here. And he turned back to his monitor, and the conversation was over, and it had been about nothing, and it had been about everything. She walked back to her desk, with her heart going, because now she knew 2 things she hadn't known that morning. She knew the mismatch was real, and she knew that Theo Beck already suspected it. He'd been living inside it. He'd just never had the paper. She had the paper. The weeks after that were quiet on the surface and loud underneath. She kept printing every Friday, same as always. But now, at night, she read. She stopped thinking of the box as a habit and started thinking of it as a record. She built herself a little system. Dates down one side, the blocks that appeared and vanished across the top. She started to see the shape of the thing. And one evening, later than usual, the floor nearly empty, it was Theo who came to her. He stopped at her desk. He didn't sit. He said, "You're still here." "Catching up," she said. He glanced around. The floor was dark past the kitchen. Cleaners 2 floors down. He lowered his voice, and he said the thing he'd clearly been carrying up in the elevator. The renamed meetings. The signature windows. You see them. She could have said no. She thought about saying no. $19,000. A garden. A mother who slept better in a place with a garden. She said, I have them printed. Every Friday. 14 months almost. He went very still. The same stillness she'd seen him go when a message hit him wrong. Except this time it wasn't dread. It was something closer to the other thing. Hope, maybe. The dangerous kind. Printed, he repeated. Before they're changed, she said. That's the point of printing. The live one forgets. Paper doesn't. He looked at her for a long moment. And then he pulled a chair from the empty desk beside hers, and he sat, and he said, Show me. They didn't do it there. Not the whole floor's shared space. He had a small office at the end, one with a door. And they went there, and she brought a folder she'd started keeping in her bag, a working copy, not the box itself, never the box, and they laid the pages on his desk under the one lamp. And for the first time, 2 people read the Fridays together. He was fast. Faster than her at the numbers, slower at the pattern, because she'd lived with it longer. She showed him the signature windows on Grant's and Sloane's grids. She showed him where the same blocks disappeared from the live version. She watched his face as it landed. She watched him understand that the thing he'd suspected for a year had a spine now, and the spine was made of paper, and the paper was in her hall closet. He said, Miss Alvarez, and she said, Theo, she didn't plan it. It just came out. His first name, plain, in the lamplight, in an empty office. And he didn't correct her. He didn't blink. He just took it, the way you take something you've been waiting for and pretending you weren't. Neither of them said anything about it. They went back to the pages. But the name sat in the room now. The centimeter was a name. Over the next stretch, working late, careful, door closed, they mapped it out fully. And when it was mapped, it was worse than either of them had let themselves think. The signature windows lined up with a specific class of deal. Off-market. Not listed. The kind where the commission structure is a private matter between principals. And across 14 months, the pattern in the pages showed those deals routed, again and again, around Theo's split. His name off the threads, his calendar clean of the Fridays, the money moving between Grant and Sloane and a short list of others. Theo did the math on the commissions. He knew the splits. He knew the deal sizes. He sat back in his chair, and he said a number out loud, and the number was roughly $2.4 million. Rerouted around him. Over 14 months. And structured, he said slowly, tracing it with one finger, in a way that leaned right up against the line. Colorado had rules about this. Conflict rules. Disclosure rules. The Real Estate Commission had a whole framework for exactly this kind of routing. What they were looking at wasn't just unfair. It was the kind of thing that had a regulator's name attached to it. Corinne was quiet. She was looking at a different column, the one she'd never said out loud. The assistants, she said. Theo looked up. Every time, she said. Look, every time one of them got moved out. I have the rough dates. Everyone does. It's the floor's favorite ghost story. It's a few weeks after one of these meetings got renamed. Not random. Not spread out. After, she laid it out for him. Date beside date. 9 women. 14 months. And beside each departure, weeks earlier, a renamed meeting. A signature window that had appeared, and then, on the live calendar, been cleaned. They noticed, Corinne said. Her voice had gone strange, even to her. That's what this is. Dominique Ellis noticed a renamed meeting. And she said something. And 9 months into her job, she was gone. They weren't fragile, Theo. They didn't fail to keep up with the pace. That's the story everyone believes because it's the easy story. But look at the paper. Every one of them was a person who was in a position to see a Friday get changed. And every one of them was removed right after. Theo didn't say anything for a while. They weren't quitting, he said finally. They were witnesses, she said, one at a time. And the turnover report, she felt the whole thing turn over in her chest as she said it. The report isn't measuring a problem. Sloane's report. Within range. It's not describing what happens to the assistants. It's the thing that makes what happens to them look normal. It's not a symptom. It's the cover. The lamp hummed. Outside the door, the dark floor. Somewhere below, a cleaner's cart. 9 women, Theo said quietly. And you're the 10th chair I watched get wheeled off. Except you print every Friday. Except I print every Friday, she said. There was a long silence then, the kind that has a decision inside it. She could feel him wanting to say something that wasn't about the deals, and holding it. Because the room was the wrong room, and the world was the wrong world. She felt the same thing. And they both left it unsaid. Because that's what careful people do. And because on that floor a closeness between them would be the easiest thing to twist into a weapon. They packed up the pages. He walked her to the elevator, a proper distance apart. They didn't touch. They rode down in silence, watching the numbers, and at the bottom he said only, "Be careful with the box." And she said she would. And she went home to her mother and her garden and her closet full of Fridays. For a few days, nothing, she printed. She filed. She smiled at Grant when he billed her a good morning, and she typed her minutes and she disappeared into the furniture the way she was supposed to. But something in her had changed, and she knew it, and she couldn't unknow it. She had spent her whole working life being the person no one looked at, and she had told herself for 34 years that not being looked at was the same as being safe. It wasn't. She understood that now. It had never been safety. It had been a kind of leverage, sitting in a hall closet, waiting for someone with hands that didn't know how to stop. 9 women had seen the same thing she'd seen. She was almost sure of it now. 9 women had watched a Friday get changed and had felt that quiet alarm ring in their chest. And 9 women were gone. The only difference, the only one, was that she had printed it. Before anyone knew there was anything to hide. Not because she was brave, not because she was suspicious. Because a long time ago, in a place where the schedule was the difference between a garden and a grave, her hands had learned a habit and never let it go. She thought about a name she'd heard once, early on. Alyssa Trent, an assistant who'd left in month 4, long before Corinne arrived. She'd heard that Alyssa had said on her way out that it was pointless, that nothing on that floor could ever be proven, that the powerful wrote the record, and the record was whatever they said it was, and a person like her would only get hurt trying. Alyssa Trent had been right about almost everything. The floor did write the record. The powerful did decide what was normal, within range. But Alyssa had been wrong about one thing. She'd thought the record was the live calendar, the thing the powerful controlled. She'd never thought about the furniture. She'd never thought about a printout on a closet shelf. Same floor, same fear. One difference. And the difference was in the hands. Corinne made a decision. She didn't announce it. She didn't tell Theo she was making it. She just knew, walking in one Monday, that she was done watching. Watching was what the 9 had done. Watching was what got you a scraped blank nameplate and a post-it with a date. She reached into her bag before she sat down. She'd brought 1 page. Just one. A single Friday printout, from months back, from before Theo had ever said good morning like he meant it, from before there was any story at all. She'd initialed it in the corner that day, the way she initialed things, out of habit, CA. And the date, small, in the margin. It meant nothing when she wrote it. It meant everything now, because you could not go back and put an initial on a Friday that had already happened. You could rename a meeting. You could delete a block. You could not unwrite her hand. She waited until the floor thinned at lunch. Grant was out. Sloane was in her closed-door quiet. And she walked, calm as anything, to Theo Beck's office. And he looked up. And she didn't say a word. She laid the single page flat on his desk, face up. The initial in the corner, the date. The signature window that would not exist anywhere else in the world by now, and the little CA. That proved she'd held it before anyone was watching. And she said nothing. She just looked at him. And he looked at the page. And then he looked at her. And he understood exactly what she had just done. She had stopped being furniture. She had become a witness, on purpose, out loud, with her name in the corner of the proof. Theo picked up the page. His hand wasn't quite steady. He read the initial. He read the date. He set it down very gently, like it was made of something that could break. And then he said the thing that would change both their lives, and he said it looking straight at her. And there was no taking it back once it was in the room. He said, "This is bigger than I let myself believe." His voice was low, careful, like a man stepping onto ice he'd been told was thin. I knew something was wrong. For months. Grant would close deals I never saw come in. Sloane would smile at me in the hall, and I'd feel like I'd been robbed and thanked for it. But I couldn't prove a thing. You can't subpoena a feeling. He tapped the page. The initial. The date. You can subpoena this. Corinne stood very still. The floor was quiet around them. Somewhere a printer warmed up and went silent again. I have more, she said. 14 months, every Friday. Theo closed his eyes for 1 second. When he opened them, something in him had settled, and something else had come loose. He looked at her the way you look at a door you didn't know was in the wall. Where? Home, in a box. A box, he repeated. Almost a laugh, not quite. Then he said the sentence. The ugly one. The one that couldn't be unsaid. I can't take this to the board without your box. I'm not asking as a man who started to. He stopped. His jaw worked. I'm asking because you're the only proof I have that I'm not crazy. The room held its breath. That came out wrong, he said. It's also true. Corinne felt the words land in 2 places at once. One place flushed. The other place went cold and clear, the way she got before a hard shift. She heard what he'd almost said and what he'd chosen to say instead. She heard the man, and she heard the principal, and she understood that for now they could not be the same person in this building. I know, she said. Both things. That was all. But it was enough. He nodded. She took the single page back off his desk, because a piece of evidence sitting in the open was a piece of evidence someone could make disappear, and she slid it into the folder. And she went back to her 10th desk and finished the afternoon like nothing on earth had changed. Something had. Everything had. The next morning, it sent an email. Routine, it said. A delegate access review. Standard hygiene. They were narrowing calendar permissions across the floor. Corinne read it twice. Then she opened the shared calendar and saw that she could no longer see the principal's delegates. The window she'd been printing for 14 months was smaller now. Grayer, half the meetings she used to see were simply gone from her view. She sat there, hands flat on the desk, heart doing something complicated. The mechanism had felt her. She didn't panic. Panic was a hospital word, and hospitals had taught her the opposite. When a monitor alarms, you don't run. You check the patient, then the wire, then the machine, in that order, every time. So she checked. The old prints were still hers. 14 months of them, safe at home, in a box, past anyone's reach. What they'd taken was the future, not the past. She stopped printing at the office that day. She didn't need to hand them a reason. She'd carry the shape of the calendar in her head now, the way she'd once carried a whole floor of patients before rounds, and she'd write it down at home where no review could narrow anything. Memory over access. She'd learned that a long time ago, too. That night she moved the box out of the hall closet where any story could find it, into the trunk of her car, and then into the crawl space under the stairs, behind the winter coats and the space heater, where you'd have to be looking to look. She stood in the dark with a flashlight in her teeth and stacked 14 months of Fridays into the cold, and she thought about Dominique Ellis, whose name got said once and then dropped like a hot pan. Dominique had noticed. Dominique had said so. Dominique was gone. Corinne wasn't going to say so. She was going to prove so. 2 nights later, Theo came to her apartment. Not for the reason a floor would whisper. For the box. Her mother was asleep down the hall. The care aide had gone home at 8. Corinne let him in and put a finger to her lips, and he nodded, and he took off his shoes at the door without being asked. And something about that small thing undid a knot she'd been carrying in her chest for a week. They spread the Fridays across the kitchen floor. 14 months of paper, rows and rows of it. She'd organized it by month, then by principal, then by that one class of meeting. The 72-hour signature windows, the ones that showed up on Grant's Fridays and Sloane's Fridays, and never, not once, on Theo's. He knelt over the pages. He read them the way a man reads a diagnosis. Slow, then faster, then very slow again. Here, he said, pointing, this one. This site visit. I remember this week. Grant told me the deal fell through. He looked up. It didn't fall through. It closed. Without me. My name isn't anywhere near it. It's here, Corinne said, and touched the printed page. It was on the calendar that Friday. By Monday, it had a different name. By the end of the month, it was gone. But not from this. Not from this. He sat back on the tile. He hadn't eaten. She could tell by the way his hand shook when he set the page down, the same tremor from his office. The tremor of a man running on coffee and dread. She got up without a word and made a plate, leftover chicken, rice, the green beans her mother wouldn't touch, and she set it on the floor beside him and slid half of it onto a second plate and pushed that one at him. Eat, she said. You can't build a case fainting. He looked at the plate. He looked at her. For a second, neither of them was an assistant or a principal. They were 2 tired people on a kitchen floor with the truth spread out between them like a map. He ate. She let him. Down the hall, her mother breathed the slow breath of someone who no longer knew what year it was, and the fridge hummed, and the city outside went about being a city. And for 1 hour, the most dangerous thing in Denver was quiet. That was the night it all came clear. Not the numbers. They'd had the numbers. The shape. I keep asking myself why they never cleaned these, Theo said, gesturing at the floor of paper. They're careful people. Grant doesn't leave fingerprints. Sloane rewrites reality for a living. So why leave a trail like this? Corinne had been thinking about it for weeks. She'd finally found the answer washing dishes. Because they don't think a calendar is a record, she said. They think it's furniture. You don't lie to your furniture. You don't cover your tracks in front of a chair. Sloane renames a meeting on the live calendar because to her the live calendar is the meeting. Change the words, change the thing. She never once pictured a printed Friday sitting in a box in a closet in Denver. Because who prints a calendar? Who keeps it? That's not a thing a real person does. You did. I did it before there was anything to hide. That's the part they can't fix. You can rename a meeting today. You can't reach back and unprint a page from 14 months ago that already has my hand in the corner. The live calendar can be cleaned. The paper can't. That's the whole thing, Theo. That's the entire case. They controlled the record everyone was looking at. They never controlled the one nobody thought to keep. Theo was quiet for a long time. The turnover report, he said finally. Sloane's benchmarking. Within range. 9 women in 14 months, and the report says that's normal. It's not measuring the problem, Corinne said. It's the problem. Think about the timing. Every one of the 9, how long between the day her nearby meeting got renamed and the day her desk got cleared? He did the math out loud. From memory, principal that he was. Dominique. Weeks. Alyssa left on her own, but weeks after. The one before Dominique, number 6, I never knew her name. A month, maybe. Weeks, every time. That's not attrition. Attrition is random. This is a metronome. She laid 3 printouts side by side. Each of the 9 noticed a renamed meeting. Each of them said something, or was seen to see something, and each of them was gone within weeks. And then the report came along afterward and dressed it up. Demanding floor. Not built for the pace. The report isn't the symptom. It's the cover story with a spreadsheet stapled to it. And Bethany Cole in HR signs it every quarter. 10 times now. Her name's on all 10 exits. Coded voluntary. Bethany doesn't know, Theo said. No, she just runs the machine. That's how the good ones stay clean. They keep the person who signs from seeing what they're signing. He looked at the 9, and then at her, the 10th, alive and on her own kitchen floor, and Corinne watched him understand that she was next, unless something changed. They already started, she said. The access review. That's day 3. For the others, the access review was the beginning of the end. Then we move first. But they didn't move first. Grant and Sloan did. It came on a Thursday. Bethany Cole called Corinne into the small conference room, the one with no windows, and slid a folder across the table with the practiced softness of someone who had done this exactly 9 times before. Corinne, we so appreciate everything you've brought to the floor, Bethany said. But it hasn't been the right fit, has it, for either side? We'd like to offer you a separation. Generous, very generous. 2 months, plus the accrued, and a reference that opens doors. Corinne looked at the paper. She knew it before she read it. She'd seen its ghost 9 times. Voluntary. The word was right there. A resignation she hadn't written, waiting for a signature that would make her the 10th line in a report that called it normal. This is the same agreement, Corinne said quietly. Isn't it? The same one the others signed. Bethany's smile didn't move, but something behind it did. It's our standard separation. Yes, 9 standard separations. 10 now. I'm not sure what you mean. I know you're not, Corinne said, and she meant it kindly, which was somehow worse. That's the part I keep thinking about. They walked her to the elevator by end of day. Facilities came for her nameplate. She watched them do it. The same scraping, the same blank rectangle she'd watched on her first week. The 10th desk becoming the empty desk. And she did not flinch. And she did not ask why. Because she already knew why. And knowing why was the only thing she was leaving with. Except it wasn't. The box was already gone. Out of any place they controlled. That was the one thing they couldn't clear. She looked for Theo on the way out. His office door was open. He was standing at his window with his back to the floor and his phone to his ear, and he did not turn around. And he did not say one word, and Corinne rode the elevator down 32 floors, reading his silence as the loudest thing she'd ever heard. He'd chosen the building. That's what it looked like. One word from a principal, and none of this happens. And he gave her nothing. And the doors closed on nothing. And she stepped out into the Cherry Creek evening, the 10th woman, unemployed. With a mother whose care ran $19,000 past what she could now afford. She didn't cry in the lobby. She was too old for that, and too tired. She cried in the car, once, hard, for about 90 seconds, and then she wiped her face and drove home to the box. What she didn't know, couldn't know, because he'd made sure she couldn't, was what Theo was doing on that phone. He wasn't abandoning her. He was doing the one thing that would have looked like abandonment from the outside and been the opposite from the inside. Because he understood the trap better than she did. If a principal publicly defended a just-fired assistant he'd been seen sharing looks with, Grant had his story handed to him, gift-wrapped. 2 disgruntled insiders, a relationship, a vendetta, a woman scorned, and the man she'd turned. The whole box reframed as jealousy, the truth poisoned by proximity. So he stayed cold in the window on purpose. And on the phone he was calling outside counsel. Not a lawyer to defend himself. A lawyer to open a review of his own firm. 11 days. That's how long the silence lasted. 11 days that felt like 11 years. Corinne sat with the box and with the bills. She thought about Alyssa Trent, the one who'd left in month 4. Certain to the end that nothing could ever be proven, that people like Grant always won, that the only sane move was to go quietly and salvage a reference. Alyssa had been sure, and Alyssa had been reasonable, and if Corinne had believed Alyssa, there'd be no box and no case, and a 10th woman would just be a 10th line. Against Alyssa's certainty, she set her own 11 years. 11 years of the exact opposite habit. In a hospital, the ones who said it can't be proven were the ones who got people hurt. You documented. You always documented. You wrote the time down even when nobody would ever read it, because the one time somebody needed it, it was the only thing between a family and a lie. She'd printed a calendar every Friday, for the same reason she'd once charted a vital nobody asked for. Not suspicion. Habit. A hand that didn't know how to stop. And on the 11th day, her phone rang, and it was Theo, and his voice was different. Not careful anymore. Lit. Bring the box, he said. Tomorrow, 10 o'clock. The glass room. The firm? They walked me out of that firm. I know. Come back in through the front. Counsel will be there. And someone from the State Real Estate Commission. I've already told the board what I'm alleging. I did it before I had the paper in my hand, Corinne. I put my name on it in front of everyone. So now I need the paper. She gripped the phone. You told them. Before you had proof. If I don't show, or if the box doesn't hold, then I'm finished at the firm I built. Yes, why would you do that? A pause. The old tremor, gone now, because you laid a page on my desk and said nothing, he said. And it was the bravest thing I ever saw. I wasn't going to answer it by hiding behind a box I didn't own. 10 o'clock. She almost said yes on the spot. She didn't. She asked for something first. 2 conditions, she said. 1. The 9 come with me. You reopen all 9 exits, not just mine. I will not be the one exception that lets them call it personal. If I'm the only name, I'm a scorned employee. If there are 10 of us, we're a pattern. Done in 2? Dominique Ellis. In the room. She noticed first. She paid first. She's in the room when this opens. Or it doesn't open. Silence. Then done. I'll find her tonight. 10 o'clock the next morning, the glass conference room on the 32nd floor was full. City light came off the Lodo brick and fell across a long table. Outside counsel at one end, gray suit, legal pad. Beside her, a woman with a state badge clipped to her jacket and the flat, unhurried face of an examiner who had heard every story and believed only paper. The board, 3 of them down one side. Bethany Cole, pale, the turnover report in front of her because she'd been asked to bring it. Grant Mercer, tanned, easy, leaning back like this was a meeting he'd called himself. Sloan Ackerman, very still, hands folded, reading the room the way she read everything. And by the door, in a chair someone had pulled in special. Dominique Ellis. Assistant number 7. Managed out in month 9. She caught Corinne's eye as she came in, and she didn't smile, but she nodded, slow, and Corinne felt the 9 women behind her like a hand at her back. She set the box on the table. Grant spoke first, warm as ever. Corinne, good to see you back. Though I'll be honest, I'm not sure why a former assistant is running a board meeting. She's not running it, the examiner said. I am. Sit down, Mr. Mercer. Corinne opened the box. She didn't make a speech. She decided that on the drive in. The speech was in the paper. She lifted out the first stack of Fridays, and she began, quietly, to read dates. March 8th. Signature window, off market, on Grant Mercer's calendar. 72 hours. Site visit Thursday. She slid the page toward the examiner. On the live calendar, this meeting was renamed the following Monday and deleted by the end of the month. This is the printed page from that Friday. Initialed in the corner. Dated, my hand. Counsel pulled the live calendar up on the wall screen. The renamed entry. The gap. The examiner looked from the screen to the page and made a mark on her pad. April 19th, Corinne said, and read the next. Then the next. Then the next. Page by page. 14 months of Fridays, each one a date read aloud. Each one matched to a deletion on the screen. Each one initialed in a corner that could not be reached by anyone but the past. Grant's smile held for 6 pages. On the 7th it thinned. On the 9th he leaned forward. This is a scheduling coincidence, he said. Calendars change. Meetings get renamed. This is administrative noise. You've taken a filing quirk and built a conspiracy out of it because you're angry you were let go. The examiner set down her pen. Then explain 9 of them, she said. Explain 9 women, Miss Mercer, each removed within weeks of the exact administrative noise she'd have been in a position to notice. Explain $2.4 million in commissions that routed around one principal. The one principal I notice, who isn't in the deletions. You want me to believe in one coincidence, I'll hear you out. You're asking me to believe in 10. Grant reached for charm and found the room already reading past it. He looked around the table for a face that would meet his the old way, the easy way, and there wasn't one. The board wouldn't look at him. Counsel was writing, and in that moment you could see him understand, for the first time in 14 months, that the assistant had always been a reader. That the furniture had eyes. He sat back. He said nothing more. There was nothing left that worked. Sloane hadn't spoken at all. She was watching the screen. Corinne watched her watch it. Watched her follow the deletions. Her own deletions. The meeting she had renamed with her own operational hand, and understood the exact second it hit her. Because Sloane Ackerman had spent her whole career believing that whoever controlled the live record controlled the truth. And here was her renamed meeting, time-stamped, immortal, in someone else's handwriting, in a box she'd never imagined existed. Her calendar had been furniture, and the furniture had kept time. You changed the live calendar, Corinne said to her gently, because there was no need to be cruel to someone already drowning. You never thought about the printed one. Why would you? Nobody keeps those. Sloane opened her mouth, closed it. For the operational brain of that floor, the woman who had authored the word normal for 9 disappearances, there was, in the end, no operation left to run. She folded her hands tighter and looked at the table. And Corinne said the thing she'd earned the right to say. Quiet, not loud. To the 2 of them. You spent 14 months making sure no one on this floor was ever a witness. You forgot the furniture keeps time. Then, Bethany Cole. Bethany hadn't moved. Her hand was on the turnover report, the physical copy, the one with her signature on the last page, 10 quarters of it. The examiner asked her to bring up the exits. Bethany did, mechanically, and there they were on the screen. 9 names coded voluntary, and a 10th, added last week, Corinne's own. You signed all 10, the examiner said. It wasn't an accusation. It was a fact, and it landed heavier for being calm. Bethany looked at her signature, 10 times. Her own name, neat, on the bottom of a page that called a metronome a coincidence. You could watch it arrive in her, the understanding of what she had administered without ever once seeing it. She had wanted clean metrics. She had kept the numbers tidy while the machine ran underneath, and she'd never looked under, because the tidiness was the whole point, and now the tidiness was the evidence. Her hand came off the report like it had gone hot. The examiner closed her pad. I'm referring Mr. Mercer and Miss Ackerman to the Colorado Real Estate Commission for conflict of interest and disclosure violations, she said. The off-market transactions in question will be reviewed and unwound, and every one of these 10 exits is reclassified, Effective today. Not voluntary. Not voluntary. 2 words. 9 women unlied about in a single breath, and a 10th, and Dominique Ellis by the door put her face in her hands. The room emptied slowly, the way rooms do after the thing has already happened. Grant left without his walk. Sloane left without a word. Bethany last, holding her report against her chest like it might warm back into what she'd believed it was. And then, it was Corinne and Theo, and the box and the city light. He came around the table. He didn't reach for her. Not yet. He'd learned that much, that some centimeters you have to be invited across. You didn't need me, he said. You know that. You saved yourself. You saved 8 women besides. I put my name on a box I didn't own, and the truth is, you'd have gotten there without me ever standing at that window. You didn't defend me, she said. At the elevator. I know what you thought. If I'd defended you, Grant reframes all of this as us. A relationship. A grudge. The paper goes in the trash and you go in the report. Staying cold was the only way to keep the record clean. He swallowed. It was the worst 11 days of my life, letting you think I'd chosen the building. You chose the building so you could burn it down. I chose you, he said. The building was just the fire I had to walk into to say so out loud. And there, in the glass room, in front of the same floor that had once watched a principal and an assistant share a look, and thought nothing of it, he took her hand. Plainly, in the light. I needed you, he said. I said it badly on my desk, and I'll say it right now. Not as rescue. You've done all the rescuing this story needed. As the man who needed you, and was too proud to say it until it nearly cost me everything. That's the whole sentence. I love you. There's no wrong way left to say it. Corinne looked at him. 34 years old. 10th desk. The least believed person in the building, holding the hand of the man who'd staked his name on believing her. Okay, she said, which is what people say when the big word is too big and true to answer with another word. And she held on. They didn't celebrate at the office. The office wasn't theirs to celebrate in, and the moment didn't belong there anyway. It belonged to the women. Corinne met Dominique Ellis in a diner booth 2 days later. Vinyl seats, bad coffee, a window full of ordinary street. Corinne had printed a list. 9 names. She slid it across the formica. Dominique read them out loud. Slowly, Alyssa Trent. The one before her. The 6 Corinne had never met, only counted. Dominique's own name, 7th, and Corinne's 10th. We all saw it, Dominique said. Every one of us. We all saw the same thing happen. They told me I was paranoid. Month 9, they walked me out and I spent 2 years thinking maybe I'd made it up. You didn't make it up. You just didn't print it. Corinne turned her coffee cup a slow half-turn. That's the only difference between you and me. One habit. You watched. I watched with a printer. Dominique laughed, wet, and pressed the list flat with both hands like she could keep it from blowing away. Theo wasn't there. Corinne had asked him not to come. This part belonged to the women who'd failed and turned out to be the floor's only honest observers. 6 months on, there is a smaller desk in a firm that isn't Halcyon Ridge. It's a cleaner floor, lower ceiling, better people. Corinne prints the shared calendar every Friday and files it, and nobody has ever once asked her why. Because at this firm, a documented schedule is just a person doing careful work, which is all it ever was. Her mother's care is covered now, paid in full, quiet and safe down a hallway that smells like clean linen. The banker's box got emptied. It holds recipes on the counter now, her mother's handwriting on index cards, a different kind of record worth keeping. Grant Mercer's license, suspended pending the commission. Sloane Ackerman, barred from principal roles at the firm she'd once benchmarked as within range. Bethany Cole, reassigned. The turnover report reissued, with a footnote no metric can smooth over. 9 exits, reclassified, and a 10th. Corinne gives a workshop now. Small rooms, folding chairs, Schedulers and office managers and the invisible people who run the floors nobody looks at. Behind her on the screen is the rewritten report. She doesn't preach. She just points at the number. 9 women watched the same thing happen on the same floor, she tells them. They weren't fragile. They weren't paranoid. They were right. The only difference in the end came down to a hand and a printer. So keep the paper, even when nobody asks for it. Especially then. And on a porch, on a soft evening, there's Theo, and there's coffee going cold, and there's the last thing. She tells him about Alyssa Trent sometimes. The woman who left in month 4, certain nothing could ever be proven. Same floor, same fear, same fluorescent hum, and the same closing elevator. One woman sure the truth was untouchable, and one woman with a habit she couldn't explain. Same building, one difference, and it lived in the hands. On the table between them, out of habit, out of something warmer now, sits a fresh printout, this Friday's. And in the corner, small the way she's done it for 15 years, and will do it for 50 more, her initials and the date. CA. If you've ever seen everything on a floor and been the least believed person in the building, keep your paper and comment the city you're watching from.